put each minion in your hand into 0/1 jars that cost 1, and then break them to release the minions. So you can see here an example of an empty jar, but this will say basically like death rattle, release Ragnaros. And that means if you essentially get here a big old hand of like big, scary, crazy stuff, you can essentially cheat it into play, presumably on a future turn, at only 1 mana per unit. So like with Ragnaros, you know, you'd be saving 7 mana, but you have to somehow pop the jar here, pop the egg, if you will, in order to unleash that Ragnaros, which, you know, obviously Demon Hunter has some ways to clear off their own stuff, basically various symmetrical AoEs, things like Immolation Aura could be a really cheap way to open up a specimen jar. I was also looking at like Infiltrate here. Pretty good, you know, you could use this to target something and pop all your jars and maybe clean up some opponents' minions as well. Hopefully like clearing their board, making way for cards like Ragnaros to potentially hit face. That's maybe not the best example, just the funniest. But I was thinking about other cards that could be a combo setup where you kind of try to OTK your opponent. So for instance, fill your hand with 2 Illidari Inquisitors and, you know, maybe a couple Briar Spawn Drakes in the hand as well, if you think your opponent's gonna have any leftover minions. Maybe a Ragnaros, actually, if if you're using all this other stuff to clear the board, then maybe Ragnaros does actually fit. There's even like, you know, Magtheridon or Kane Sunfury. I'm sure there's gonna be other examples as well you can think of for cards that are able to deal damage when summoned directly into play. So like Battle Cries, those are kind of out. Obviously, if they're inside the jars and summoned, you're not gonna be using Battle Cries. But for stuff like those Inquisitors and such, then you do actually have some real lethal potential. I can see worlds where you hit people for 16 damage with a couple Illidaris, and, you know, Ragnaros is up to 24, and like suddenly you're piecing together some interesting lethal combos that become really cheap. Now, the challenge, of course, is getting to that stage where you're spending 9 mana on Toru and you have a handful of, like, you know, maybe 2, 3, 4 things that are exciting, and then it takes kind of another turn after the Toru as well. So it's like turn 9 you do nothing, then maybe on turn 10 you finally set up with discounts. Maybe it happens a little bit faster, but I think there has to be some crazy intersection here of like enough lethality, because like the examples I gave aren't even really enough damage. It's not quite there. 16 to 24 or whatever wouldn't really be as much as other combos with crazier lethality that often happen even faster and more decisively. So you have to have that intersection of like enough damage and enough time to get this done. And I don't really see that happening with a 9 mana card up front. I like that it doesn't require a ton of other moving pieces, just drawing the stuff, which historically is not typical for Demon Hunter. But I don't like how it takes so much upfront mana cost, and then it also takes a whole other turn effectively, right? Like, you know, waiting that one extra turn is probably not that big of a deal. But just compared to the crazy lethal OTKs we've had recently, you know, like King Plush happening way faster. I think Protoss Mage happens way faster, and the numbers can get much bigger if needed as well, whereas this seems really capped on the potential damage output. So I just don't think this lands there. And outside of a combo world, like, this just definitely doesn't do enough. Just using these to get like big dudes on board is not going to be worth it, because you're spending so much time just playing a 9 mana card that's not a big dude and doesn't do anything. I think, you know, pushing those out in smaller bursts as opposed to all at once would be a bit more effective. And, you know, you could technically do that with your jars, play 1 or 2 at a time, but then the cost discounts probably aren't as meaningful either, because you're just sort of floating a bunch of mana or using it in a non-decisive way. So ultimately, I don't know, man, this card just feels like it's in a weird spot for me. I kind of see some combo potential, but I just think it's going to be much worse than Demon Hunter or other classes can already do, and therefore it will not keep up effectively. So I think Entomologist Toru is unfortunately not very good. Oh wow, quick edit from Regis from the future. I just saw the Reddit post revealing this card, and apparently there was a typo where this that indicated this used to be a 6 mana 4/5, and they like preemptively nerfed it to 9 mana 7/7, which I could see why a 6 mana version of that would be absolutely insane, right? Because that combo I just talked about with the Illidari Inquisitors and stuff, like happening that much earlier in a game, is so much more lethality, right? Because then you can kind of build it aggro-y and chip them down a bunch, and then do this on like 6 and 7, and their health total is really low. Whereas if you're looking for a 9-mana combo finisher, it has to be a little bit more decisive because you can't play quite as aggro-y and bridge to 9 mana as successfully. So pretty crazy insight there that this card is going to be notably worse, I think, at 9 than as originally designed at 6. All right, so moving on to the quest here for Demon Hunter. This is another unusual one. I think I like it a little more than most people I've seen so far, but maybe not by much. This is Unleash the Colossus. 1-mana legendary spell, of course, starts in your hand as a quest. You need to deal exactly 2 damage to an enemy on your turn 15 times. So hitting minions for 2, hitting the enemy for 2, doing that 15 times. If you do, you get the Garishi Colossus, a 5-mana 8/8. With Battle Cry for the rest of the game, whenever you deal exactly 2 damage to an enemy, deal 2 more. So effectively doubling your damage there when you deal 2. And, you know, my first instinct when I saw this was like, oh, but Demon Hunter's the class that deals 1. You know, the hero powers that famously deal 1 a lot. 2 is unusual. You will note, though, there are already some cards dealing 2, but there's going to be a lot in this video as well dealing 2. But I was looking like, you know, we just got Fellfire Blaze. We were all like, what is this card for? Well, now it kind of makes sense. This deals 2 damage to all enemies. So, you know, if you hit 3 or 4 minions on board, that's going to be 3 or 4 ticks on your quest and the face. You know, like one card like this could do like a third of your quest effectively all on its own. We've also had little spells trickling around like Headhunt. You know, this is a little deal 2 damage. So there are a few things already. There's not a lot, though, to be clear. I'm not sure those are the only 2 examples, but there's 2 of the only examples, I think. Like, there just aren't a lot of options. A lot of minions hit for 1. There's some minions that deal 2. A couple spells we saw there, but a lot of things don't line up here unless you help with, like, you know, spell damage on Immolation Aura or something to do it. But I don't know if you want to run spell damage to help. But this could be a way to do it, too. Keep in mind, it's only enemies, not friendly stuff. So I think the current set doesn't support this very well. That said, let's go ahead and run through the new cards that are definitely going to help here. We have Infestation, 2-mana spell. This gets you 2 1-cost Garishi Stingers. And as you can see, those are spells that deal 2 damage and summon a 2/1 grub with Rush. So the spell is going to deal 2. The grub is going to deal 2. That's another 2 ticks. You get 2 of those. That's kind of 4 ticks per infestation, but to keep in mind, that's also a 4-mana commitment. I mean, I will say the Stingers are pretty great cards for 1 mana themselves, right? Like, that's efficient. They do have this 2-mana overhead on them, so that kind of hurts. There's also the Insect Claw here, a 3-mana 2/2 weapon. After your hero attacks, summon a 2/1 grub with Rush. So again, each attack here is kind of 2 procs on the quest, the weapon itself, and the Rush minion. I will say, you know, this kind of interacts negatively with your hero power if you're using it for quest, because like, oh, if I really need to kill 3/3 and I want a hero power, like, ah, shoot, I need to hit for 2. So there are going to be some weird moments where that happens, where you're like, ah, shoot, I really need to deal 3, but I have to deal 2 for my quest. We've also got the Garishi Wasp here. This is awful, I think. A 6-mana 2/8. Whenever this takes damage, get a 1-cost Garishi Stinger. And again, we know the Stinger, but man, like 6 mana is so crazy for this to be pushing this quest, because I think you want to be done like by turn 6, not still working on it on turn 6. And like the fact that this is a 2-attack minion, you know, is by design, obviously, but also it's like it just hurts the balance on this otherwise so much. Like, it's just capping a lot of the efficiency on these numbers. But you know, we did see, like, you know, Immolation Aura, that sort of thing. Like, Immolation Aura, that's not the word. The card, is it? It is Immolation Aura. Aura is just such a weird name for that card. Anyway, you know, like, okay, sure, you could Garishi Wasp into Immolation Aura, but I don't think that's gonna be good. That's very awkward and slow. Finally, there's the Garishi Tunneler, a 3-mana 2/4 beast with stealth, and after this attacks, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. So again, you know, every time this attacks, could be 2. Fortunately, again, not a great minion, man. Like, I think this minion's really awkward and bad, other than like the fact that maybe it's incrementing the quest. So I think Insect Claw is a really good card, like just generically a great card. I think Infestation's an okay card. You know, paying the 2 to get the upside later is like, it's not bad, but it's okay. Ultimately, spending 4